This is how it feels to be a web developer in 2025. Actually, though, this is the CSS Wrapped 2025 that was just published by Google in the Chrome team. I hope this image isn't AI generated. It's interesting either way. That said, 2025 has been a fascinating year for CSS, not just because Firefox is finally catching up to standards from like early 2020, but more so because lots of other things got shipped, and it really feels like the Chrome team is embracing the fact that we've had to use a ton of weird libraries to handle things like dropdowns, and finally these things are being added to the browser. I've always been concerned that AI stuff would prevent us from iterating on standards because all of the agents are only going to know the old things, but that has not slowed down the Chrome team at all, even if Adi Osmani has left to do other things at Google. Regardless, this is going to be a really fun breakdown. I can't wait to go over all of the cool things that changed over the last year in the world of CSS and web design. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. Platforms like Vercel are awesome until you realize you don't want to use JavaScript, or you have to attach a database and then you have to go through a different platform for that. Then you put a firewall in front and you start doing all of these things and attaching all of this glue, and you're no longer building, you're maintaining. That is, unless you're using today's sponsor, Zavala. Zavala is the all-in-one cloud for whatever you're building. They include everything from the databases to the CDNs to the servers that you're actually running things on, and integrations with every major framework and platform you'd want to build on. Whether you're trying to deploy Node.js or Java or Elixir or even Rails, Zavala has you covered. Their secret is that they're not just one cloud. They're not an alternative to things like AWS, GCP, and Cloudflare. They're built on top of them. You don't turn on Cloudflare by going to the Cloudflare dashboard, setting up an account, and doing a bunch of weird DNS stuff. You do it by going to your app, hitting settings, and checking a checkbox. Turning on the CDN is a checkbox I can click on. Do you know how much more annoying this is basically anywhere else on any other platform? It's so nice. If you're worried about cost, don't be. They are comically cheaper. Companies like Stepler saw an almost 80% cut in their bill by making the move over to Zavala. Stop wasting time with glue and start shipping at soydev.link/Zavala. This year, we're giving you new tools to sculpt a dynamic web. Sculpt dynamic interfaces, stretch your imagination, and play with these powerful new CSS features. Also of note is I'm using a Chromium-based browser. I didn't try this too hard in Zen, and I still dearly love Zen. But personally, I wanted to see how this would look in Chrome because it's by the Chrome team. Firefox is catching up, but Chrome's still ahead. We've been crafting new features with you in mind. I know this is like typical marketing mumbo-jumbo, but having talked to a lot of people on the Chrome team, it does really feel like they want to hear this feedback and make changes accordingly. I've been really impressed with how transparent and open the Chrome team has felt over the last year, even if there have been some concerning departures. The laying off of Adam Argyle was terrifying. Nicole Sullivan leaving for Safari and Apple was unexpected and broke my heart. And now Adi Osmani leaving as well. There are still awesome people on Chrome, but those are three of my personal favorites, and seeing all of them disappear over the last 2 years has been rough. So fingers crossed that this trend can continue, but it really depends on how much positive support the Chrome team gets and how Google feels about this investment. So leave kind words to the Chrome team in the comments section if you don't mind. And on the way down there's a little red button that says subscribe for at least half of you guys. If you could hit that, we're trying to get to 500K subs before the end of the year, so it would help out. Your customizable components, we give you the clay, functional, stylable components, building blocks, ready for you to mold their look and feel entirely. This is a terrible sentence. Next-gen interactions with new APIs for movement. That's all the fancy like view transition stuff and probably a bit more. And optimized ergonomics. Stop fighting the code. These features help you work with CSS in its natural state, making your workflow intuitive. Okay, I need a reality check, chat. Have I been reading too much AI slop output that I'm starting to feel like all enterprisey bullshit speak is AI slop? Or is this AI slop? Am I thinking this is AI slop because I read too much AI slop? Or is this AI slop? Is this AI slop? Yes, it's slop. No brain rot. IDK, I just work here. Cool. Gotta pull it. First one is fine. I'm just bad at reading. Bring your design to life. Use new APIs to control all complex movements for a fluid and seamless user experience. Okay, people are agreeing with me. It's slop. Hopefully the rest isn't. Ready to see what we molded in 2025? The Chrome DevRel team will guide you through 22 CSS and UI features that landed on the web platform, fresh from the kiln. Is that a marquee? It is really funny that the first like super fancy CSS feature on the site is a CSS feature that isn't CSS. It was in the DOM, but it got deprecated. Customizable components. The workshop was hot this year. We took the decades-old problem of styling dropdowns and fired it to perfection. We also delivered new core blocks like native anchor positioning and carousel scroll APIs. These are really good things. The native dropdown styling finally existing, as well as having better anchor point stuff built in, is huge. Invoker commands. Show a dialog modally and more without JavaScript. We can go try the demo. Cool. So now we have the show modal dialog. That's the dialog, and you can toggle the popover. You know how annoying these things were to do without packages before? Now we barely need them. They do have a polyfill for it here. Here's their minimal example they show in the blog post, though. Unclick document.querySelector my dialog dot show modal. See that? There's a built-in show modal call that you can do now. Not really CSS, but it's invocable through JavaScript to trigger the style stuff. Oh, that's the old way, actually. The new way is an invoker command, yeah. Button command for my dialog, command is show modal. And now that you've defined what this button is commanding, it will trigger without any JavaScript being needed at all. Awesome. Cool. Currently, it's possible to send commands to popovers and dialog elements, with more types of elements possibly coming in the future. Interesting. I do really like the idea of elements that are clearly tied together, not requiring another language from another file to control their relationship. Similar to why I like Tailwind. Like, these elements are inherently tied. They're in this component together. I shouldn't need to switch files to see how they look. Here is very similar. I shouldn't have to switch to a JS file to figure out how this button and how this dialog interact with each other, or do some weird ref management in React. This syntax is a way to tell the browser how to make these things interact, and not making it my problem in JavaScript land is a good thing. It's also possible to set up custom commands to send to elements. These custom commands are prefixed by 2 dashes and are handled by the toggle event. Interesting. This is actually really cool. Since you can send commands to an element with a button, you can then, on that element with a query selector, add in a custom event listener for this new custom event that you defined. That's really cool. I did not know that was a thing. Dialog light dismiss, bringing a nice popover API feature to dialogs. One of the nice features introduced by the Popover API is the light dismiss behavior of popovers. This lets users close them by clicking outside on the backdrop or by pressing the escape key. We were just dealing with this with a new feature about to ship in T3 chat. Again, having this in the browser is great. Light dismissive behavior is also available on Dialog through the new closed by attribute, which controls the behavior. You have closed by none, which means no user triggered closing of dialogs at all. This is the default. Again, problem with the browser is they implement something, it works a certain way, they realize that way is wrong, and then they make it so you could do it right, but all of those additions to make it right are new things being added. The classic example of this will always be triple equals in JavaScript, because double equals sucks, and by the time they fixed it, it was too late to change it without breaking old websites, so triple equals was created to give the better behavior. Here, the close by none behavior is default, because that's how it worked before, because it was wrong, and now you have to specify close by close request or close by any to give it what I would consider the better default behavior in order to match the popover behavior. The fact that if you don't put a property here, the defaults differ so much is obnoxious. Welcome to the web. But now, show dialog, and I can escape key, but close by is none, so it won't let me. So I change it to close by any, now I can. Good, it should have been the default. Popover equals hint. What's going on with the spacing there? Ugh, the kerning. Ooh. Ephemeral popovers that don't close others. Hint popovers with a popover equal hint flag are a new type of HTML popover designed for ephemeral layered UI patterns, like tooltips or link previews. Opening a hint popover does not close other open auto or manual popovers, allowing layered UI elements to coexist. This is a really bad problem with the previous implementation of popover stuff. The nature of how it worked meant that if you had a modal or a popover that had a sub hint in it, it could break everything. Hint popovers can also exist on link tags, unlike auto and manual ones, which require activation from button elements. Interesting. Hints are allowed to work on other types of things. Oh, I see. I have that open and I can hover this at the same time. That's the difference. Previously, this would have canceled this open menu because they were sharing the popover space, but hint types are now excluded from that difference. Good stuff. Speaking of which, customizable select. You can finally style HTML select elements with CSS. This is, what, 2 decades of waiting? How long has it been since we couldn't style the select element? If you aren't familiar, the classic like HTML select dropdown, this view here, has never been customizable, and you're just kind of stuck with what your browser wants it to be, and every browser handles this quite differently. No longer is such the case. You can now use base select styles to unlock several powerful features, including complete CSS customization. It has all of the fun pseudo classes that you have to use to target things, but you can control the content of this now. Select @:picker select appearance base. This is the new minimal solution that optimizes it for customization. So if we go back here, I know it's here, CSS. There we go. Now there's no more border on that part. It's not doing what I expect for this piece, but it's customizable now. And you can see here with the example that they have on the actual docs. This is a stock HTML select element, no custom JavaScript, no custom implementation of the dropdown. All the options, all the pieces just behave. And in CSS, we can now make it render differently. This is really nice. This is a very overdue change. Not having to write JavaScript in order to have a basic selection element is a nice thing that we should encourage them for doing. The other cool thing about this is in certain cases where it doesn't make sense to use the customized picker, you can still have content that's accessible for screen readers or usable for somebody on like a mobile phone or a legacy device. You get the classic like built-in select behavior in the browser and the ability to customize it on the platforms that support it. So your Firefox users are screwed, but everybody else. Actually, let's make sure this is broken in Firefox, as I suspect it will be. Oh, I just assumed, I didn't even check. It shows here that it's not a thing here. Watch what happens when I click. Yeah, see, it falls back on the traditional list. Your browser does not yet support customizable select. Try again in Chrome 135+. Yeah, happy I picked Chrome by default. Scroll marker button. Carousel scroll affordances with native CSS pseudo elements. Oh boy. Apparently nothing supports this yet. Poor Ken Wheeler, the time of his jQuery carousel is nearing an end. Just 20 years later, the browser's finally adding it. These are 2 new pseudo elements, the scroll button and scroll marker pseudo elements. These features let you create native, accessible, and performant carousels with just a few lines of CSS and no JavaScript. So theoretically, once this is implemented, I can click this button or this button, which will trigger a scrolling pseudo behavior, allowing me to scroll a certain amount. I'm assuming they let you specify how much. Oh, they even have scroll markers. That's actually really, really cool. These markers are grouped in a scroll marker group and behave like anchor links, letting users jump directly to a specific item in the scroller. This is useful for creating dot navigation for a carousel or a table of contents for a long document. That is really cool. Here's one that also takes advantage of anchor positioning to make sure things stay in the middle. Oh, the little arrow. This being almost entirely CSS is so cool. Is the JS just a polyfill? Oh, it's just a comment photos from Unsplash. Yeah, that's so cool that you can do this type of thing without having to write any dynamic JavaScript code. That is good. This is good for the web. The anti-JS people better be really hyped about all of these things. I know they're not because they don't actually care about the web, but still, super cool. Scroll target group. Turn a list of anchored links into connected scroll markers. This is for custom scroll spy so that you can have the markers like we saw, but with full customization. That's actually really cool. The links now, we've all done the thing where a link targets a specific title or a tag on a page. Now you can customize the styling depending on which section you're in. So when I go here, watch, I scroll section 2, section 2 is lit up. I keep scrolling, section 1 lights up. It's super simple to do. You just have your links here, 1, 2, and 3. But in the CSS code here, scroll target group auto. And if it's the current target, color light, dark, red, pink. So it changes the color when it is the current target. Yeah, it's this scroll target group combined with target current pseudo class lets you do different styles when the thing that this link targets is what's currently in view. That's super simple and actually really, really nice. I already have uses for this. This is super cool. This might be my favorite one so far. And I really like having dialogue stuff. Anchored container queries. Style elements based on their anchor position. Oh, this is really useful. So if you're anchoring like a tooltip and you want to have the little like triangle, like the caret for it in a different direction, depending on where it's positioned, you need to know how it's anchored. And of course, the example is a tooltip. It is kind of crazy that something as basic as a tooltip has required a decade or so of engineering and back and forth to try and figure out how to standardize it kind of in the browser. So here, when I scroll around, the positioned element moves the tooltip based on how much space is available. But when it does that, it has to change the direction the caret goes, because if that's still pointing down when it's below, it's going to look awful. So here we have the anchor defined by using position anchor and anchor name with these two fields. So that's how the CSS relates these elements. And you tell it to try fallback with flip block. So it will flip to the opposite side of the direction depending on where it's being blocked. You go to default area, in this case it's bottom. If I change this to top, we're going to have everything be backwards. Where now when it's on top, the arrow is facing the wrong way because you have to build that relationship yourself, so to speak. Because it doesn't know in this tag if it's above or below. You have to determine that based on other things. The tag for this, the anchored fallback flip block, this is when it is flipped, when it is opposite the default, apply these styles instead. It's not when it's on the bottom, apply these styles, which would be really nice if I could say on bottom, apply this, on top, apply this. Instead, you give it a default and then say when it is not that, when it is having the flip behavior, style differently. I was hoping that would be cleaner. This is a huge win for anchor positioning and component libraries, enabling more robust and self-contained UI elements with less code. Yeah, this is for component library authors, not for us as day-to-day devs. Like the average web dev should not have to set this up. It's cool that it exists and it is as flexible as it is. I just wish it was more declarative. Speaking of which, declarative interest triggered UI with interest for. Hover and focus triggered UIs everywhere on the web, from tooltips to rich hover cards and page previews. While this pattern often works well for mouse users, it can be inaccessible to other modalities like touchscreens. Additionally, developers have to manually input the logic for each input type, leading to inconsistent experiences. The new interest for attribute solves this by providing a native declarative way to style an element when users show interest in it without fully activating it. It's invoked similarly to the command for attribute, but instead of a click, interest for is activated when a user shows interest in an element, like hovering over it with a mouse or focusing it with a keyboard. When paired with Popover hint, it becomes incredibly easy to create layered UI elements like tooltips and hover cards without any custom JS. Didn't they just say it's inaccessible to other modalities like touchscreen? And then said you need a keyboard or a mouse? I don't know how they're handling the touchscreen part here. It's a demo that uses interest for to create product callouts on an image. Hovering over the buttons on the image will reveal more information about each product. Look at the HTML quick. Yeah, button class info point interest for callout 1, point interest for callout 2. You define these two new divs, both with the popover equals hint. And now in the CSS, you can specify how those things relate. Here you say interest for callout 1, top 25, right 30. That's how you want to position it relative to other things. And this one is bottom 10, left 22. Interesting. Good stuff. That's a really useful one. Oh God. Next gen interactions. With this new interaction toolkit, you can now animate between pages of view transitions and sculpt gorgeous scroll-based experiences. Scroll state queries. Style descendants based on whether something is scrollable, stuck, or snapped. I wonder if this title here, scroll state queries, is using this behavior. See that? When I scroll up, it gets stuck in that top bar and then passes. I bet this might be how it does it. Everything but Firefox and Safari. Well, everything Chromium based then. Thanks to scroll state queries, available from Chrome 133 onwards, you can use CSS to declaratively and more performantly style elements in these states. Let's see the video demo. When the item is snapped, it gets styled differently. Fun. You have to put parent container type scroll state on the parent element for the CSS and the browser to know that you want it to have this behavior. And now in that sub element, you can have at supports container type scroll state. This is the classes when it's applied, also assuming that it supports it. By default, transition opacity 0.5 seconds ease. And when it is not scroll state snapped, we set the opacity to be 0.25. So then it fades it in and out. And the default opacity, I'm assuming, is 0. Show that anywhere? This does feel really nice to play with. I recommend, again, links in the description as always. If you want to go play with this, it's nice. That can't be right, though, because this is transitioning opacity, but it's sliding up and down. So that's not the example being used here, almost certainly. Does it even require stopping at each snap point? I don't know if that's working, though. Interesting. I will call this one partially supported. Also weird, because this is definitely not the right code for this. Yeah, there is no instance of opacity in this example. Yeah, it just slides it in and out. That's what I thought. I'm getting so gaslit today. Okay, what do we have next? Tree counting functions. Staggered animations. Oh boy, that's actually really, really cool. Common problem with animations in the browser is triggering multiple of them in an order is obnoxious. Because if one animation takes 200 milliseconds, the other one takes 300, the next one takes 50, are you going to put a delay on all of them so they trigger in the right order? What if one gets delayed or like the rendering takes too long? Doing ordered transitions is one of the most obnoxious things possible in the web, so almost nobody does it. Having the ability to specify to the browser, this happens, and when it's done, this happens, and when it's done, this happens, is actually really exciting and should enable some really cool animation stuff. Usual method to create staggered animations for list items where each item appears sequentially requires you to count DOM elements and hard code the values into custom properties. Yep, this method is cumbersome, fragile, and not scalable, especially when the number of items changes dynamically. The new sibling index and sibling count functions make your life easier here, as these functions provide natural awareness of an element's position among its siblings. Oh, so I don't have the ability to block one animation on another. I'm just using its index to calculate. Okay, so all the problems they just listed are still true, but at least you could do it. That's annoying. Let's see how it looks at least. Okay, yeah. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, again, because it knows what index it is when it pops back in. But if you wanted to do something cooler, like have them fade out in order, then come back in order, you're going to need JS still. Notice that there's no animation on the fade out, because when you hit shuffle, the order of the elements changes, and it can't do anything until that's done, so they just do it immediately. Annoying. There's a lot of potential to figure this out. The idea of like keyframing and having blocking animations that block each other via CSS has so much promise. We've also now confirmed that a lot of these are Gemini generated. So it's possible a lot of the images and even some of the text is AI slop. Next, we have the scroll into view container. Sometimes scrolling only the nearest ancestor scroller is all you want. This actually would be very useful for T3 chat. This is for nested scroll containers, because if you have a container that has its own scrollability in it, you don't want to scroll all the way through all of these. You just want to get this particular parent into view. Let's see the demo. That perfectly showcases it, actually. You have this sub-scroll on the page here. And when you're going left and right and scrolling, it's fine. But if you click the snap and it uses the anchor snap, when it does that, it's going to anchor the browser to that location. So watch what happens when they click. It scrolls down to put that right at the top. But if you don't want that, you only want it to affect the container that is being targeted, not any parent containers. You can use container :nearest, and it will only affect the one that is in there. So now watch, with that toggled, oh, that's so good. I would argue, again, this is the thing that probably should have been the default behavior. It's much more intuitive, but yeah, good changes. Speaking of good changes, nested view transition groups. View transitions are so fun. I'm enjoying them a lot in my side projects lately. And now they're going way further with nested ones. Retain 3D and clipping effects while running a view transition. Oh boy. Nested view transition groups are an extension to view transitions that let you nest : view transition group pseudo elements within each other. When view transition groups are nested, instead of putting them all as siblings under a single view transition pseudo element, it's possible to retain 3D and clipping effects during the transition. I can already see all the crazy things Damon's going to do with this. I can't actually. I have no idea what he's going to do. I just know he's going to go chaotic with it. That's view transition group elements. Another group, use the view transition group property on either the parent or children. You can give them all view transition names so you can call them more specifically, and the group, you say which group to link to, in this case, nearest. The nested groups get placed inside a new view transition group children pseudo element in the tree. To reinstantiate the clipping used in the original DOM, apply overflow clip on the pseudo element. We got Brahmis and Una. Oh, I see. It's the text is flowing in and isn't relative to the transition happening, the paragraph text. Yes, thank you. I was realizing right as chat told me. I don't want spoilers. My sensitivity to these things has gone down with all the AI slop. Yeah, there we go. That's so much better, yeah. The text doesn't flow out before the box because now they can be related transition groups. I do want to see the obnoxious 3D rotation, though. That's beautiful. What do you mean obnoxious? That's how the whole web should work. But if I turn off the nested view transitions but leave that on, you'll see the text all comes out normal because it wasn't on the page before. It's not part of the view transition group. So the paragraph text stays. That is really cool. Absurd to have these things apply on 3D transitions, but people are going to have some absurd fun with this. I'm hyped. DOM state preserving move. Oh boy, move before. I have a whole dedicated video I did on this forever ago. The TLDR of this is if you have an element on a page that has some state on it, moving it sucks. Because if I have like a video player and I want to change where it's mounted, like I want to move it from the main view to like a picture-in-picture view, you're going to lose your state if you're using the built-in view component for a video. Like if you just do a video element and you move it when it's playing, you're screwed. Move before is a new API that lets you change an element's location without killing the state of the element. As they say here, it works just like insert before, but it keeps the element alive during the move. So this means your video keeps playing, your iframe doesn't reload, your CSS animations don't restart, and input fields keep their focus, even when you're actively reparenting them across your layout. It wants me to play the YouTube video for the demo? Sure.
Hey, my name.
Mute that. So now we have this video playing here. If I hit move with move before, keeps playing. If I hit move with insert before, the iframe gets reset because it is changing its location, but it loses the state when it recreates the element. Very good. I can tell you how many times I've had to like move my video player logic out of the DOM and put it somewhere else, like in the JavaScript world, so I could keep track of it when the element that was outputting the content moved. So fucking annoying. I'm so happy this is a thing now. What browsers support it? Safari doesn't support it. Fucking course Safari doesn't support it. I'm excited about that one. And now we're in the final section, the optimized ergonomics. These modules aren't just plug and play. They're true chameleons, allowing users to redefine their interface, functionality, and aesthetics down to the atomic level. I am so sorry. This is the most slop fucking paragraph I've ever read. If anybody doubted that this is AI slop, I'm sorry, I was right. We've now confirmed it. They aren't this, they're that pattern. Yep, so AI. The advanced attribute function. Type values for attribute beyond simple strings. Oh boy. Previously could only be used within the content property of a pseudo element and could only return a value as a CSS string. The updated function expands the capabilities, allowing attribute to be used with any CSS property, including custom properties. It now also parse attribute values into various data types beyond just strings, like colors, lengths, and custom identifiers. So here we're parsing the data color attribute, type color, comma, red is the default. So in this example, I hate they put the color one right before, so I'm so confused. Like, are they going to change the color to red when it's smaller? No. They're using this here by putting a attribute on the element for the stars. They are choosing how much of it to expose. So since this can be up to 5 stars, they take the attribute for how many stars it is, multiply it by 20%, and that's the percent fill. And they have a linear gradient for the gold color and then transparent so that it cuts off at that point. And now it's very simple. In the HTML, you pass the data rating, 4.5, and that CSS will multiply 4.5 by 20%. You end up with a 90% number there. And then you apply that as a gradient with a stop to transparent, and that transparent stop just immediately cuts it off. Very clever way to introduce this type of thing. I think that's cool as fuck. It's now way easier to, without needing a custom framework or JavaScript or React or something, make your elements way more interactive by just implementing different data classes on it. That's super cool. Not data class, data attributes. You get the idea. This is dope. This is going to make like HTML and CSS only component libraries are much more viable now. Is this web components? No, web components are a mess of JavaScript as well. This requires zero JavaScript, which is really promising. Toggle event.source. Find out which element was responsible for toggling the target. I've needed this for so many stupid fucking things. When a popover dialog or detail element gets toggled, it can be interesting to know which element was responsible for toggling it. For example, knowing if the user pressed accept cookies or reject cookies button to dismiss a cookie banner is an important detail. The source attribute of the toggle event lets you know exactly that, as it contains the element which triggered the event to be fired, if applicable. Based on that source, you can take different actions. Okay, this is a little bit silly an example, because here the logic is on the toggling of the banner, we have an event. If the event source is somebody clicking yes, we give them a cookie, but if it's no, we don't. How do we know what these elements are? Because we document.getElement by ID on them right here, which means we have the element, which means we can bind an onClick to the element or an event to the element. I hate this example. On top of that, what happens if they get out of this banner with another thing like an escape key, not handled? To be fair, it looks like this one is a traditional div that's a popover auto, so it's not going to be dismissible without you clicking something. Regardless, not how I think you should solve that. Ugh. Not fun. Textbox features. We can finally flawlessly center text vertically. Oh man, I wanted this for so long. This is so good. A font's content box is defined by internal metrics, specifically the ascent and descent that reverse space for accents and hanging characters. Because the visual boundaries of Latin text are the cap height in the alphabetic baseline, rather than the ascent and descent, text will appear optically off-center even when it's mathematically centered within a container. There are some characters like the D here goes past the cap, even though capital letters don't go that far. Obviously, the descender line goes a lot further, but you get the idea. But that means that the way centering works sucks, and we usually just use baseline. The textbox property makes finer control of vertical alignment of text possible, letting you flawlessly center text vertically. The textbox trim property specifies the sides to trim, above or below, or both, and textbox edge property specifies the metrics to use for the textbox trim effects. With trimming both edges and setting the over edge metric to cap at the under edge metric to alphabetic, text will now be visually centered. If you thought it was hard to center a div, wait till you see how hard it is to center text. This is hilarious. This is multiple paragraphs of how to center text vertically, finally. And as always, they're doing the magic thing with CSS where the first, second, and third values change different things. The first value changes the edge, the second value changes how to trim the top, and the second changes how to trim the bottom. So here, the top is at the cap, the bottom's at the alphabetic base, and the edges are all being trimmed. Let's turn off the edge trim. I don't think it'll... Oh, yeah, it does things here. Yeah. Edge trim none, and now it just goes straight to the top and bottom. But if I trim both, it gets reduced, and we can choose how to trim over. It could be text, so that's as high as it could go. That is as high as the lowercase letters go. Cap is the default, I believe. And same on the bottom. The text bottom is all the way as deep as it can go. The alphabetic bottom is where the baseline of the letter is. Fun. I am so thankful I'm not that into typography because this would kill me. I am into shapes though. New CSS function for complex and responsive shapes. The new shape function. Firefox is the only thing that doesn't support it. Beautiful. Wonderful. The new shape function lets you clip an element to a complex, non-polygonal, responsive shape in CSS. This is a great option for clipping masks using clip paths, and it works seamlessly with CSS custom properties to define coordinates and control points, making it more maintainable than SVG shapes. Thank God. That also means you can animate custom properties within a shape to create dynamic and interactive clipping. That's so cool. That's so cool. This is an image. You can see the original square image there, but we have a shape that is being defined here. Here is saying that the browser doesn't support it. In the CSS, we can see clip path shape from 0%, 20%, curve to 120 with 25, 0. Okay, maybe the syntax isn't better than SVG. This does hurt a little, I'll admit. Kind of wild to read this. But yes, as chat is realizing, this would go crazy for animations. Oh, look at that. Anthropic is degraded. What a surprise. Let's just do 5.1 instant. Sure. I want to animate the following shape CSS so that it waves, like the wavy part shifts to the left over time. Right? The animation transition CSS logic. Let's see how well this works. Yoink. Working beautifully. Try that again with a smarter model. Ugh, gross. Not what I had in mind at all. It is animated, but it's also gross. Here's one that uses a blob generator for shape to create a fun framing effect. That is kind of cool. Oh, and of course, if statements. I already talked about this and how cool it is to have if in CSS where you can actually apply conditions. If media-oriented landscape, row, else column. Look at that. Is that not useful? And custom functions, which I've also already covered. I did a whole video on CSS functions and how potentially useful they can be. They've also expanded the range syntax to make it easier to combine with these things. You have this HTML that has a data rain %. Data rain % is a custom property. Give it a type using the attribute helper, and then you can use it within a range style query. So here we have rain %, which is us converting the data rain % into type percentage. And now, if the style of rain % is greater than 45%, then the weather card should have this blue, light blue gradient on it. Now, when the chance of rain is greater than 45%, the card gets a blue background. That's really cool to have this in CSS. Real logic that doesn't affect the execution logic being separated out of it is really nice. Not dealing with this in JavaScript and having the way things look defined externally and the way things behave defined in the JS is a mostly good thing, and I like seeing this. Range queries can also be used in if statements as well. So background if style rain % is greater than 45, blue, else gray. Nice. Real good. Stretch sizing keyword. Make an element fill its containing block regardless of the box sizing. Interesting. Is this going to fix the thing where if you have a sub element and you didn't put the right min width on something in a flex box that it won't stretch to the right size? The stretch keyword is a keyword for use with CSS sizing properties like width and height that lets elements grow to exactly fill their containing block's available space. It's similar to 100%, except the resulting block size is applied to the margin box of the element instead of the box determined by box sizing. Yay. Using the keyword lets elements keep their margins while still being as large as possible. That's really cool because you can keep the margins of the inner element while still stretching to fill the parent element. Yes. Oh, and corner shape. Oh boy, I'm excited about this one. I built a dumb project a long time ago. Dogecoin simulator, super inspired by, what's it called? Or Universal Paperclip. And making these trashy hand-drawn looking borders for the boxes for the buttons was the hardest part of the project by far. Being able to do weird shit with corners is going to be fun. Although I'm scared they're going to give us too many traditional ones and not custom. Yeah, round, bevel, notch, scoop, or squircle. Ugh. God, are you actually going to use scoop? Bevel's kind of cool. Notch is really cool. Square is how it works by default, isn't it? And then squircle, the classic. Scoop terrifies me. I hate this. I hate this a lot. Oh, look, it's AI generated now. You can change the shape of the corners by specifying multiple. For even more control, you can use the super ellipse function to create any continuous curve, allowing for fine-tuned and unique corner designs. That's what I was looking for. That I can abuse. And that's the end. What a set of interesting things. This is really, really cool. I am thankful for the Chrome team for continuing to iterate on these things and publish such useful resources. CSS changed a lot over the last year, and there's a lot of cool stuff in this that I'm excited to play with. I'm curious about you guys, though. Are you tired of dealing with CSS stuff like this, or are you actually excited about all the cool things that have been enabled in Chrome? Let me know what y'all think, and until next time, peace nerds.